May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. This morning, in addition to having blessing of the animals, we're celebrating all of creation. And with the weather as beautiful as it has been, not counting this muggy day today, but as beautiful as it has been these last couple weeks, it's not hard to celebrate creation. In fact, there are probably hundreds of people who aren't even here who would tell you that it's easier to feel close to God in nature than in a church. I say it's a both and, not an either or. I read recently that faith is seeing a glorious sunrise and knowing who to thank. That's what we're doing today, thanking the Creator of all that out there. The animals, the trees and flowers, the wide open sky, the stars, and yes, the sun, which we here in Western New York appreciate even more than most people do. Today we give thanks and we celebrate what has been given to us. And because every gift comes with responsibility for its care, we will also confess a little later that we haven't always done such great jobs as stewards of God's creation. Because ultimately it comes down to stewardship. Stewardship isn't just about giving your money to charity and to the church. It's about our primary role in God's creation. In the book of Genesis, which we just heard read, God says, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over the cattle and over all the wild animals of the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." It's right there at the beginning, our responsibility. But we know how the story goes. We decide as humans that we want to be like God, not just live in God's image, but with the knowledge and power that God has. And that's when everything goes to hell in a handbasket. The first thing that happens is that we are ashamed of ourselves, of the natural order of things, our nakedness. Then, because we violated the trust God had put in us, God sets us up as adversaries with the serpent, actually. And you could say that it's just the beginning of a long history of adversarial relationships with animals and plants. Where in Eden we simply had food provided for us and we were unbothered and carefree, now with the fall from innocence, we had to toil and work the land for our food, and animals would be our adversaries and in some cases even our predators. I wonder what the connection was between becoming more like God and our gaining of knowledge of good and evil that opened the door to our treating all of creation with such contempt and abuse. I am one of those who believes that for the most part, the fall was as much about our becoming fully aware and conscious and necessarily leaving the state of innocence and dependence we had in the Garden of Eden. And yet, for some reason, when we claimed our free will, we also cut ourselves off from God's creation and haven't been able to return to a healthy relationship with God's creatures and the environment. The good news is that many of us are trying. If we can clean up the Hudson River and our smog-choked skies, there is hope for humankind. And we have made huge strides in that direction. Regardless of how you feel about governmental regulation and global warming theories, as Christians, we must reclaim that original imperative to be responsible stewards for God's creation. It's about the very first covenant God made with us as freshly made creatures. It doesn't get more basic than that. So what can you do? Like any major movement or change of the world, it starts with small steps. We're beginning to recycle and loading less and less into our country's landfills. A next step is to buy less to start with, to consume less. We can throw less away and use what we have for longer. We can begin insisting on locally grown produce in our markets, and that's getting more and more popular. We can have meatless Mondays and reduce our carbon footprint when it comes to food and our driving and our use of energy resources. All of this requires consciousness and a willingness to change our behavior. If we can see it as a responsibility we were imparted with at our creation, it would help. For others of us, it probably doesn't help that being green is now very trendy. We need to act despite our aversion to trends, especially since this trend is a long time coming. But now I've quit preaching and gone to meddling, haven't I? The greatest asset in our cultivation of consciousness is the habit of gratitude. We begin that practice for you today as we continue with blessing the animals and as we give thanks to God for all of creation. That's why I wanted to do more than just bless the animals. I wanted this feast of St. Francis to be a celebration of all of creation. But when you leave here today, whether you had an animal blessed or not, I hope that you will continue to thank God for those bits of creation that catch your attention. The soothing rain, a crisp fall day, even the leaves you have to rake, or the snow you have to shovel. Give God the credit for having a system in mind where all of this has a perfect place and purpose, even to the point of naming us as guardians and stewards. Amen.
Amen.